Anyway, he tested 6 other characteristics, height, other things, but he always tested one characteristic at a time, whether it was color or height or whatever. And he found that there were hereditary determinants for different traits. Genes are in pairs, and some are dominant and some recessive. And the reason I mention this is I want you to just, whenever you're looking at a research situation, I want you to remember this picture of these purple and white pea plants, and remember that what you're doing is scientific. It needs a big sample size. It needs to be one variable at a time in most cases. You need to be very, very careful that nothing is affecting the research except that one variable that is changed. And so consumer research is applying scientific principles to the understanding of consumer behavior to guide and improve our marketing efforts. Statistics is an important part of it. You want sample sizes of at least 50 to 100 or more for any kind of projectability of your results. And primary research, think about it for a minute. I'm sure most of you have been contacted by a researcher at one time or another. And I don't mean just being in focus groups. I mean filling out surveys, etc. And a lot of people in my class have used SurveyMonkey to do research. Some of you, I'm sure most of you in this class have used SurveyMonkey. So doing research online actually is can be very inexpensive versus ways it used to be done. So now we've kind of conceptually talked about research, just the overall thought that the more you know, the more facts you know about a piece of business, the more successful you personally are going to be working on that business. We talked about different kinds of research, secondary research. Kind of didn't spend much time on it, but we mostly talked about primary research. And we've mostly talked about quantitative research, not so much about qualitative research, because quantitative research is what you'll be doing for this project. And in terms of kind of testing, what's going to work better. And that's the kind of research you're going to be doing, and mostly in database marketing as well. So this is just a quick illustration of 2 different welcome to our website layouts that were tested. You can see they have different colored links, learn more buttons. That's the main difference. And what was found was that the click rate was 72% with the one on the right and 52% with the one on the left. So that was a significant difference, and that's why they went with the one on the right. And so you're basically you're going to be testing one creative execution versus another. You're going to change one variable from one to the other. So on a print ad, you would be changing the headline, for example, from one ad to another and reading which one got more phone calls or got a higher recall score in the magazine, etc. So you can test offers. Offers is another very good thing to test, because we all know that it's a very important contributor to click-through and buying, etc. You could be testing different visuals. You could be testing, in our case, it's going to be different subject lines. So you would send one subject line to one group of similar consumers and another subject line to the same type of consumers, and you'd see which one pulled better, which one gets more opens, click-throughs, orders. So these are some suggestions about ways to vary your subject line, which is kind of interesting. You could test 2 different emotions, 2 different value propositions. You could test long one and a short one. You could test different questions. Have you ever done this versus a definitive statement? And you would test versus, you'd probably be looking at open rates, right? The subject line, that's the key thing. But you'd also be looking at the rest of it, because your subject line may actually get more conversions because it does something to sell people. So you would look at all the key metrics: open rate, click-through rate, and conversions. So these are the types of variables you would test with an email: subject lines, calls to action, offers, prices, what day of the week and time of day is sent, and that's one I know that MailChimp will help you with. How you handle personalization, what's the visual. So this is what you guys are going to be testing for your project, and these are the ways you look at, these are the metrics: opens, clicks, conversions. Also unsubscribes and cart abandonment are two other key metrics. And you want to make sure, whoops, sorry, I just jumped ahead here, I apologize. You want to make sure that your results are statistically different, and you know that if it's just 1 percentage point, it's not statistically different, but based on your sample size, is one statistically better than the other. You're going to want to look at that when you do your test of subject lines with MailChimp. Okay, and so email subject lines, you know you want to open me. Of course, the whole purpose of an email subject line is for them to open the email. I don't know if you heard that. That was my dog kind of snoring over there, my pug. So I'm still home doing this. So an email subject line is like an envelope. The envelope, you get the direct mail piece in. The purpose of the envelope is to get you to open it. The purpose of the subject line is to get you to open the email. So we have finished our discussion of research. And again, it could be a whole class very easily. So we just kind of top-lined a very few things. Here's your multiple choice test. And you're going to pick the right answers here. Take a few minutes, look back at the slides if you need to, and then do your answers and send them in. And that is the end of our research section. And now we're pretty much finishing up the class. You'll be delighted to hear. And so what have I told you today? Well, we started with a review of the previous class, which was way back on the 14th. And what we reviewed was Paul Davis's lecture. We also talked a little bit more about Cambridge Analytica, which we had asked Paul about, but which has come up in the news quite a bit with Facebook. And we got kind of updated on that because that is a database. That's a news headline that's all about databases. We then continued our ethics discussion. We went back and reviewed that an ethical decision is supposed to create the greater good, but also do the least harm. And we said that the basic method of making an ethical decision is just to make sure you have thought about every single stakeholder in the decision, and that you then put yourself in their shoes and think about how they will be affected by different outcomes, different decisions. And then after you've done that, you're going to do your best to craft the best decision. And we tried it out in a little exercise, a little case study about an employee who did not tell the truth on her resume. You then had a quick quiz on chapters 14 and 15, which you submitted, which I will grade and get back to you. We then had our 3 new learning modules, first in customer acquisition, where the use of the database is primarily to first find your MVCs, because those are your prospecting targets. And second, you can use databases, you can rent other databases and actually find new customers in those databases. We then talked about customer loyalty, where our goal is to basically use, frankly, automated communication that's as personalized as possible, it's event triggered, and is run from the database, and is geared to move every customer along the purchase funnel, from just a one-time purchase to loyalty and advocacy. We talked about research and finished up talking about testing your subject lines for your email. Now, I'm going to briefly touch on our next class and what the requirements are. And then I would like you to have team meetings. I want you to not have a live meeting, but let's keep in the spirit of this online class and have meeting via Skype or via Google Hangouts, or all of you get on the phone together and do it that way. And then I do want to report from that meeting per the guidelines I've given earlier. So, as I said, I want this report before our next class. And the next class, first of all, on March 28th, I think everybody knows by now because it's today, we do not have a class because you guys are on spring break. Whoop-de-doo. The next class, we've got a midterm review. This content will not be required for the midterm. This content will be required in the final. In April 11th, you will have your midterm. And also, I want in the next class, which is on April 4th, I want to go over your consumer strategy. I want to go over your Tabasco, as we call it. I want to understand who you're targeting, what your benefit is, how you're supporting it, what is your basic communication strategy to get the person who gets your email to click and open and then to donate to this charity. I hope you're continuing to build your database because most of them needed more people in them. And I'm also hoping that by now, pretty much you've contacted MailChimp. You're starting to put all that in gear so we can, wind this project down. So thank you, class, for participating in this online class 7. And hope you're having a great spring break, and see you on the 4th.